Welcome to the second half of the 2021 MLS season as we have officially hit match week number 18. And in terms of match week number 18 of the weekend's action, we will once again have almost a full slate of MLS weekend's action as we're going to have 12 games that's going to be happening. We're going to have a game tonight later between the San Jose Earthquakes versus the Vancouver Whitecaps, which is the one that I'm going to attend in a couple of hours. And then I believe we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games that's going to be happening on Saturday. And there's going to be 4 games that is going to happen on Sunday. And also, I'm going to do a little bit of a throwback in terms of this preview. I am actually going to preview all 12 games that is going to happen in this weekend's action, and I'm going to do it in one take. This is something that I used to do, and I decided to kind of bring it back because tomorrow I am going to be relatively busy, not only because of work, but also to do some ground hopping and attend a cup final in the NPSL level. But we begin with the first game. As I mentioned, is a game that's going to kick off in a couple of hours from now, and a couple of hours from now also I will be attending this game between the San Jose Earthquakes versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. Well, for the Quakes, it's hard to believe, but they are unbeaten in the last 7 games and currently have the longest unbeaten run in MLS. And if I would have told you that in the beginning of the season, you would think I'm just crazy. The fact that the Quakes at one point of the season, especially as we hit the halfway point of the MLS season, that they would have the longest unbeaten run, but that's where we are right now, as their record is 5, 6, and 7. And although they do have the longest unbeaten run in MLS right now, they're still kind of stuck in 10th place throughout this unbeaten run. Although they're getting very close in terms of getting themselves above the red line. They're only 2 points behind the team the last team that occupies the last spot of the playoffs, which I believe it's the Portland Timbers. While the Vancouver Whitecaps, yeah, they're not anywhere close in terms of getting to playoff conversation, as their record is 3, 7, and 7. Although they kind of have been having the same thing that the Quakes had a couple of weeks ago, where they have trouble not only winning games but also kind of losing game. And in other words, they've been drawing a lot of games. They have drawn 4 straight game coming into this one. This game will start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. In terms of the last 5 games for the Quakes, they come off of a big 2-1 victory against LAFC before drawing 1-1 against the Portland Timbers. And then they go on the road to win 1-0 against the Seattle Sounders to end that 13-game winless run that they had. But before that, it was a 1-1 draw against the Dynamo and a 1-1 draw against Sporting KC. For Vancouver, they drew 1-1 against the Galaxy on the road, drew 2-2 at home against Minnesota controversially, and then drew 2-2 on the road against LAFC, drew 0-0 at home against the Houston Dynamo, and then winning 2-1 against the LA Galaxy at home. So, yeah, this is kind of a game between two teams that have unbeaten. I mean, if you are an optimistic Whitecaps fan, you would say that this team have been unbeaten in the last 5 games. But if you're a pessimistic Whitecaps fan, you would say that, yeah, you know, we have been gone winless in the last 4 games, and these 4 draws has really not helped our cause in terms of trying to get ourselves into playoff contention. But we shall see whether or not if they can maybe finally turn those draws into a win, although it's not going to be easy because they're about to play against a Quakes team that, again, this Quakes team, ever since I think Almeida decided to kind of abandon the complete man-marking system, this team has been really hard to beat and has been a team that has really got themselves back into a playoff conversation, when a couple of weeks ago I thought that was just almost like it was going to be impossible. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Minnesota versus the LA Galaxy. So this is the first of 7 games that is going to be kicking off on Saturday, and this is the first of 3 games that's going to be on national television, as I believe this game is either going to be on Fox or FS1. Either way, it's going to be on the big Fox network. Now watch how I got that completely wrong, and this one probably is going to be on ESPN, but nevertheless, it is on national television. The game will start at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Actual kickoff is actually almost on time, 5:01 p.m. local time, almost the exact same time as when it is advertised to or the time when the broadcast start this game. The Loons, of course, they're unbeaten in the last 5 games and really have only lost once ever since they start 0-4 this season with a record of 7-5-5. While the Galaxy, they drew 1-1 against Vancouver at home and their record is 10-2-6. In the last 5 games for the Loons, they won 2-0 at home against Houston, drew 2-2 controversially to Vancouver on the road, drew 2-2 on the road against LAFC, won 2-1 against the Portland Timbers, and won 1-0 against the Seattle Sounders at home. For the Galaxy, they drew 1-1 against Vancouver, won 1-0 against RSL, won 4-1 against the Timbers, lost 4-0 against the Galaxy, and drew 2-2 against, or lost 4-0 against Dallas. No, I don't know why I said the Galaxy twice. But then they drew 2-2 against RSL on the road. And I also remember that I think Minnesota is, I think in the last 5 games they have won every single home game. So yeah, it seems like the Loons and Allianz Field has started to be becoming a fortress like I remember. But obviously I think this is going to be probably one of the toughest challenges that the Loons are going to be facing, especially if the Galaxy, if they do get Chicharito back in this game, it would definitely be a much more challenging task. But nevertheless, I do believe that this team can continue this unbeaten run, and that as long as if this defense continue to be rock solid as we have seen the past couple of games, and the offense just did enough to get all 3 points, I expect the Loons should be able to get all 3 points in this game. And now watch how they're not going to do it, and I just basically jinxed my team, and they're probably gonna lose against the Galaxy. And my overconfident, like what happened a couple of years ago in that playoff matchup where I was confident that they were going to beat the Galaxy, and look what happened. The Galaxy actually won that playoff series. So in some way you can also say this is kind of a rematch of the 2019 Western Conference first round matchup, and there was no doubt that the Loons wants to get some revenge after what happened in that match. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Montreal versus the New York Red Bulls. So this is definitely a game that I would say it's kind of a desperation derby for both of these teams, because both of these teams have not been in a great run in these last couple of games. For Montreal, they have lost 4 out of their last 5 games, and their record is now 6-5 and 7, and have now dropped below the red line. While the New York Red Bulls, they're winless in the last 6 games, and quite frankly, they've only won 1 so far this season on the road, and their record is 5-4-8. This game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff, and I'm not sure if this is actually correct, but the actual kickoff is 8:25 p.m. local time. Now, usually when I see that kind of kickoff, I'm thinking, well, this is probably going to be on FS1 or maybe on the Fox network, because usually they kick off game 25 minutes after the scheduled kickoff, but that's not the case. It's one that's going to be on ESPN Plus, so I don't know why exactly they decided to kick off that game so late. But nevertheless, in terms of the last 5 games for both of these teams, you see there's a lot of red between both of these games in the last 5 games, because, as I mentioned, they have not been in a very good form. For Montreal, they they lost 2-1 against DC United on the road, then drew 2-2 at home against Atlanta. Then lost 2-1 to Miami on the road, lost 2-1 on the road against New England, and lost 1-0 on the road against NYCFC. For the New York Red Bulls, they lost 2-1 on the road in the last game against Chicago, drew 0-0 against FC Cincinnati at home, lost 3-2 at home against New England, lost 1-0 on the road against DC, and drew 1-1 against Toronto on the road. So, yeah, again, confidence level certainly for both teams is not very good, and, definitely this is a game where both teams are looking to try to snap out their funk. And in some way, if there is a team that, if both of these teams are kind of consider themselves maybe playoff contender, I think the Red Bulls have more pressure in terms of trying to get a win so they can snap out of the funk, because it is started to kind of get away from them with the playoff contention, where, remember a couple of weeks ago they were above the red line? Yeah, because of this winless 6-game run, and I talk about how, it doesn't take much for you to go on a bad run and all of a sudden you find yourself below the red line, and it just seems like that's the case for the Red Bulls, and also kind of the same case for Montreal. So again, this is a game where both teams are desperate, trying to get a win to snap out of their bad form that have now got themselves below the red line. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is NYCFC versus Inter Miami. So if there is a team that is below the red line in the Eastern Conference that has been red hot, are looking to get themselves back into playoff contention out of nowhere, that's Inter Miami. I mean, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about that 6-game losing streak, we thought all hopes were lost, and there was a lot of Inter Miami fans that, rightfully so, have been calling for Phil Neville's head and want him to be fired. And in fact, it's kind of shocking the fact that, this season I predicted that Phil Neville was going to be the first to let go, and now we have 2 head coaches that have already let go by an MLS team, and none of them is by the name of Phil Neville. So this is why you should never take my prediction seriously, and this is also why I probably are one of the worst in terms of making prediction. I mean, God, I can't wait until we see at the end of the year looking at my prediction in terms of the standings, because I'm pretty sure I got a ton of those wrong from this early season prediction. But I will give credit to Phil Neville, kind of started to turn around the ship a little bit, but there is no doubt that this is going to be probably the toughest game that Miami going to face during their many good fortune that they've been having, as they're going to be playing against an NYCFC team that, they of course have lost in a penalty kick shootout against Puma in the League Cup, and in some way they have a very short rest coming into this game, because this one actually ended on Thursday morning, and since this game, this game is going to kick off relatively late, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 8:08 p.m. local time. And by the way, this game is going to be at Red Bull Arena, because I think the Yankees are playing at home, and anytime when the Yankees are playing at home and NYCFC has a home game, you probably know who's going to get the priority of using Yankee Stadium. Now, NYCFC, of course, I've already mentioned before, they of course lost in against Pumas in the League Cup, but they have actually been in a relatively good form and have got themselves actually all the way up to 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. While for Inter Miami, they are unbeaten in the last four games. They've got themselves from being at the bottom of the Eastern Conference and have got themselves, I think, now up to 10th place in the Eastern Conference. The last 5 games for both of these teams, for NYCFC, they drew 2-2 against Toronto on the road, drew 0-0 against Chicago on the road, won 4-1 against Columbus, won 5-0 against Orlando City, and won 1-0 against Montreal. For Inter Miami, they won 2-1 against Nashville SC at home, drew 1-1 against Orlando City, won 2-1 at home against Montreal to end that 6-game losing streak. Well, to end that 7-game winless run. The 6-game losing streak came to an end when they drew 1-1 against the Philadelphia Union at home. But before that, in really kind of the rock bottom moment for Inter Miami, they lost 5-0 against the New England Revolution at home. So, yeah, this should be a very interesting match. And, again, this is kind of one that is kind of hard to call for. I'm pretty sure NYCFC will be a little bit frustrated about what happened in Thursday morning and look to try to get themselves back to winning ways. But that being said, this Miami team, they definitely have a lot of confidence coming into this game, and if they can continue to get on this unbeaten run that they had, don't be surprised they can get themselves above the red line. And it just feels like this season, more times than not, we have seen where teams, you think they're dead and buried, and all of a sudden they go on an unbeaten run and get themselves back to playoff contention. And this is also why when I do the emotion index just a couple of days ago, I still have not actually put like a special a box that says, yeah, these teams are pretty much in see you next season mode, or at least I kind of put it in the 5th tier, but I kind of didn't mean it, because in this league, it's never see you next season soon until maybe we get to like the last quarter of the season, because there's always time for teams to try to go for a late season resurgence, and start to see Miami is definitely doing that, start to finally play to their potential and potentially get themselves into the playoff spot. But now moving on into the next match, and for a team that really wants to get themselves back to playoff contention but have failed to do so and really kick off what we were expecting a second half resurgence, is Toronto FC, who is now stuck at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and in general are actually dead last in the entire league and currently leading the standing in terms of the wooden spoon race. And this is also kind of a matchup between the team that is at the bottom of the conference against the team that is at the top of the conference, which is the New England Revolution. Now, the last time we had that happen, I think it was Miami playing against New England when Miami was at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and yeah, that was not a great match for the team that is at the bottom of the conference. Now, as much as I think that is expected of many people, you'll be surprised that there's been times where we've seen teams that that are at the bottom of the conference against teams that is at the top of the conference, and they can of course pull off a big upset. And I feel like TFC could definitely do so because, the last time both of these teams met, TFC actually beat New England on the road and actually are the only team that is able to beat New England on the road this season. Now, the other thing that we'll also mention is that the Revs, of course, they will counter and say, well, we're still top of the East and we are just leading the Supporters' Shield standings. And not only leading that, but we're just cruising along because we're also starting to pull away from the nearest team that could challenge us for the Supporters' Shield standings, which is Sporting KC, but they have like a 7-point lead over them. And their record is 12-4-3, and they are the first team to able to get that magic 40-point total. And the reason why I say it's a magic 40-point total is because that's usually around the amount of points that you are probably going to have to get if you're going to maybe make it to the playoffs. But I'm pretty sure playoff conversation is not in New England's kind of talking point. Their talking point right now is that they want to continue to dominate the rest of the league and maybe, just maybe even try to chase down LAFC in terms of the most ever points that has ever scored by an MLS team in the regular season. Now, in terms of the last 5 games for both of these teams, for Toronto, it was a 2-2 draw between them and NYCFC. They did kind of fell apart in the game against the Union, losing 3-0 on the road. Before that, it was a 1-1 draw between them and Nashville at home, a 2-1 win on the road against Chicago, and then it was a 1-1 draw against the Red Bulls. For New England, they of course won 2-1 against Philly before drawing 0-0 to Nashville, won 3-2 on the road against the Red Bulls, won 2-1 against Montreal, and then of course, as I mentioned, they absolutely demolished Inter Miami on the road by winning 5-0 there. And again, this is a matchup that I think many will say New England could be the favorite, but knowing the fact that TFC is starting to get a little bit healthy, and especially with Pozuelo, I think he's now should be back to almost 100%. This is definitely a TFC team that I think people should not take very lightly, even though they're sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and maybe this is just a beginning of them finally getting most of their important player back in their squad, and they can maybe kick off a late second half resurgence to get themselves out of the bottom of the Eastern Conference and rise up into the playoff spot. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, and in terms of the last match on this board, is FC Dallas versus Sporting KC. So, speaking of team that used to be at the bottom of the East, or at the bottom of the conference, but have really made a resurgence to get themselves into playoff contention, is FC Dallas. Another team that, out of nowhere, them going on a 4-game unbeaten run has now bring them on the cusp of potentially making the playoffs and only 2 points away from actually getting above the red line. Now, they do have a bit of a challenging game, this one at home, as they play against Sporting KC, who has a record of 10-4-4. Although SKC, yeah, they want to forget what happened on Tuesday when they got absolutely shellacked by Lyon at home in the League Cup, losing 6-1 in that game. Although I think SKC fans will basically say, well, yeah, we would expect that was going to happen when we basically decided to put an SKC2 team against one of the best team in Liga MX, and yeah, I don't think that result is going to be indicative of what SKC is, and it is. I don't think SKC, as bad as they look in that game against Lyon, I don't think that's the SKC team that we know for this season. And again, that was a game where they just really put their kids out and almost kind of feel like they kind of punt that competition. I know Peter Vermees basically didn't admit that he, of course, punt that competition, and in fact, he kind of said he was absolutely embarrassed and that this loss was completely on me. But in many ways, you can secretly say that he does not want to be part of this competition, and hence, yeah, that when you look at the lineup they put against Lyon, it just feels like it was just a lineup for them to just get out of the League Cup as soon as possible, so can focus more on MLS play. And yeah, they should be much stronger coming into this game. Although that being said, FC Dallas, last time they faced against SKC, which was on the road, they beat them, and that was one of the biggest surprise of this this season, and they have a chance to do so in this one. But in terms of the last 5 games for both of these teams, for Dallas, they won 2-0 against Austin FC, drew 1-1 against FC Dallas on the road, won 2-1 against SKC on the road, as I mentioned before winning 4-0 against the Galaxy, and then losing 2-0 on the road against Colorado. For Sporting KC, they drew 0-0 against the Colorado Rapids on the road, won 4-1 against LAFC on the road, lost 2-1 at home against Dallas, won 3-1 on the road against Seattle, and drew 1-1 against the San Jose Earthquakes at home. And I also forgot to mention that this Dallas team, you talk about a team that is kind of like the giant killer of MLS. They are really the giant killer of MLS this season, with the way that, for whatever reason, when they do face against tough teams, they always have a good record against them, even though when you look at the record, that should not be the case, but that's how it is for FC Dallas. So, I think they're going to once again put up a good fight against a Sporting KC team that, they're looking to try to move forward from that 6-1 loss and look to get themselves back to winning ways in this game. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 6 games that's going to be happening in terms of match week number 18 of the MLS weekend's action. Alright, so moving on into the last 2 games of the Saturday action. We first have the Houston Dynamo taking on the Colorado Rapids. The Dynamo currently have a 3-9-6 record, while the Rapids have an 8-4-4 record. As this game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. Well, for the Dynamo, after Atlanta was able to get a win to end what was the league longest winless run, well, unfortunately, the Dynamo has that dubious honor now of having the league longest winless run at 11 games. Well, for the Colorado Rapids, they drew 0-0 against SKC at home, and in terms of the last 5 games for the Dynamo, unsurprisingly, a lot of red and also black in terms of the last 5 games, as they lost 2-0 against Minnesota on the road, lost 3-2 on the road against Austin FC in the first ever Copa Tejas. Then it was a 0-0 draw against RSL at home, a 1-1 draw on the road against the Quakes, and then a 0-0 draw on the road against the Vancouver Whitecaps. For the Rapids, it was a 0-0 draw against Sporting KC at home, a 1-0 win on the road against Austin, a 3-0 loss on the road against RSL in the Rocky Mountain Cup. Then you have them winning 2-0 against Dallas at home before drawing 1-1 against the San Jose Earthquakes at home. And, for the Dynamo, I know it's been rough for them, and they have definitely head into a downward spiral, but as it is the case with teams that have been on a long winless run, there's this old saying that all good things has to eventually come to an end. Well, the opposite kind of can said to be true, where all bad things can eventually come to an end, and all winless run that teams tend to deal with is eventually come to an end. And for the Dynamo's sake, hopefully that is going to be the case, where they can maybe finally end their winless run that they've been going through. Although it's not going to be easy, as they're going to be facing against a Rapids team that there's no doubt have done so much better on the road this season compared to their past couple of seasons. In fact, the Rapids in these last 2 seasons, ever since they started to get themselves to be considered one of the top team in the Western Conference, have really played much better on the road, consider they were a bottom feeder a couple of years ago. Although, that being said, it's not a surprise when you are good. You're going to be both good at home and on the road, and the vice versa could be true when you're bad. You might be able to get some points at home, but on the road, you're basically are just going to be kind of a punching bag. But, we'll see whether or not if they can get a victory against the Dynamo, and I hope that they don't get too confident coming into this game, because, like I said, when I'm seeing these long winless run that has came to an end, it's usually against team that you did not expect that was the team that have been going for a long winless run to finally comes to an end. And likewise, the Dynamo, they can maybe pull off an upset in this game and maybe finally get this winless run over with by winning against the Colorado Rapids, but we shall see whether or not if that is going to be the case. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is RSL versus Austin FC. So for RSL, they currently have a record of 5-6-6, while for Austin, it's a 4-4-9 record, as this game will kick off at 10 p.m. or will start at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 8:08 p.m. local time. For RSL, so far in these last 6 games, yeah, it's been rough. 1 win in the last 6 games. While for Austin FC, it's the same thing. It's been kind of a rough patch that they're going through, and in general, it's been kind of a rough season for their expansion redemption campaign, as they in the last 5 games they've only won once, but it was a significant win because that was the game when they faced against one of their interstate rival, the Houston Dynamo, in the first ever Copa Tias. And right now, as it seems, I think they or actually no, they don't have the lead because Dallas, even though they're actually tied with Austin with the Copa Tias standings, I believe Dallas has the edge because they have a 1 goal more in terms of the goal differential. But nevertheless, in terms of the last 5 games for both of these teams, for RSL, it was a 3-2 loss against the Portland Timbers, and then a 1-0 loss against the Galaxy. And really, both of those losses they had on the road, I didn't think they played bad in both of those games, and it's just that they just lack that finishing. And if they had that finishing in both of those games, they could have maybe pulled off a draw against both of those opponents on the road. But before that, it was a 0-0 draw against the Dynamo on the road before winning 3-0 against Colorado and then drew 2-2 against the Galaxy. For Austin FC, they lost 2-0 in their second Copa Tias meeting against FC Dallas before winning their first ever Copa Tias meeting against the Houston Dynamos 3-2. Then they lost 1-0 at home against Colorado, lost 1-0 at home against Seattle, and they lost 2-0 at home against LAFC. So yeah, home form has not been their best, and the same goes with road form, as they only have one game so far this season on the road, and they're going to be facing against an RSL team that are desperate to trying to put those good performances that they had in the last couple of games into 2 wins in this one, and we'll see whether or not if that's going to be the case. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be the first of 4 games that's going to be happening on Sunday, and the second of the 3 games that's going to be on national television, which is Atlanta United versus LAFC, as this game is going to be on ESPN. And if this game happened, I think back in 2019, this game would have definitely been a game that a lot of people would circle on their calendar, because it's going to be between 2 of the best teams in the league from both the opposite conference, and they're going to be facing off against each other. And I also think that some people won't actually disagree with me to say that 2 years ago this would have been maybe a preview in terms of MLS Cup. But oh, how the mighty has fallen in terms of now we're into 2021, and Atlanta is once again struggling this season with a 3-9-6 record, though they finally did end their franchise record winless run by winning 3-2 on the road against Columbus. Well, for LAFC, yeah, they're still looking to try to end their winless run that they've been having, which is at 5 games, and their record is now at 6-5-7, and once again find themselves below the red line again this season. As I mentioned, this game will start at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, but the kickoff time is actually the exact same time as the start time, which I don't know. Should I believe that of course is the truth, because I don't think so far this season we have had any game that is actually kick off at the same time as the broadcast start time in MLS. But maybe this could be the case. This might be one of the time that this game might actually kick off as it's advertised to start with. But in terms of the last 5 games for both of these teams, for Atlanta, they won 3-2 against Columbus on the road to finally end that 11-game winless run. But before that, it was a 2-2 draw against Montreal, a 3-2 loss against Orlando City on the road, a 1-0 loss against Columbus at home, and a 1-1 draw on the road against FC Cincinnati. For LAFC, they're coming off of a 2-1 loss against the San Jose Earthquakes on the road, a 4-1 beatdown at home, which was by far the worst loss that they suffered so far in their franchise history at home at Bank of California Stadium in the regular season. And then it was a 2-2 draw against Minnesota before another 2-2 draw against Vancouver at home, and then they lost 2-1 on the road against the Portland Timbers. And you can also say that this is kind of a game that is kind of a desperation derby for both of these teams. And I don't know who exactly has the more pressure coming into this one. I mean, you could make the case that LAFC has the more pressure because of the fact that they've been winless in the last 5 games, and you can definitely sense that the MLS media are just praying for them to start to be good again, because all those talk about them being the so-called best team in the league has not really come to fruition. And and I even said in my review in that game between LAFC versus the Quakes. Not only the fact that they could potentially not be an MLS contender, but can you imagine the fact that they could actually miss the playoffs? Like, if they miss the playoffs, this would be probably one of the biggest failure we have seen a team coming into a season with a lot of expectation. But that being said, you can also say with Atlanta United too, with them spending so much money in these past couple of season and trying to reconstruct a new team to get themselves back to the level that they were when they came into the league, and it just have not worked out whatsoever. Although I will say this, is that yesterday there was a breaking news, and you thought I forgot to mention this, but I'm going to mention the fact that they are indeed going to have a head coach that is going to be taking charge of this game, and that guy is going to be Gonzalo Pineda, although I don't know if he's going to be on the touchline for this game yet. I think it's still going to be Ross Valentino for this one before he hands the keys to Gonzalo Pineda for this one. But that is a name that, Gonzalo Pineda, he's been a guy that has been a long time assistant for the Seattle Sounders, and he's been linked with a lot of head coaching job for the past couple of years, and I'm definitely very happy to see that he finally gets a chance with, although he's going to get a chance against a team that, he's going to be under immense pressure immediately, because he is supposed to be a guy that a lot of Atlanta fans are hoping the key to try to turn this team around, and we shall see whether or not if that is going to be the case. And again, I'm not quite sure he's going to be on the touchline for this game yet, because he just announced that he was going to be the new head coach of Atlanta United just as soon as yesterday. But now, moving on into the next match, and that, of course, is going to be Chicago versus Columbus. So this game will start at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 5:08 p.m. local time. For the Chicago Fire, they won 2-1 against the New York Red Bulls to improve their record to 4-5-9, while Columbus, they have now lost 3 in a row, and their record is actually dead even at 6 wins, 6 draw, and 6 losses, and they're barely hanging on in terms of the playoff spot, as they are the last team to make it into the playoffs. So the playoffs would start today in 7th place in the Eastern Conference. For the Chicago Fire, in terms of the last 5 games, well, would you look at that? Isn't this very similar to the form that the Chicago Fire has been in the last couple of seasons, where they would win 2-1 against the Red Bulls, but then drew 0-0 against NYCFC, then go on the road to drew 1-1 against the Philadelphia Union, and then inexplicably lose 2-1 against TFC at home, and then drew 2-2 against DC United, which, in other words, they're back to their inconsistent self, where you just can't guess what kind of Chicago Fire team will show up for this game. Now, that being said, they are going to be playing a Columbus team that is desperate to try to get a victory, because, as I mentioned, they lost 3-2 at home against Atlanta, lost 4-2 at home against DC United, lost 4-1 against NYCFC on the road before winning 1-0 against Atlanta United, and then drawing 0-0 against Nashville SC. And defending has been non-existent for Columbus in the last 3 games, as they have given up 11 goals in the last 3 games. And for a team that is supposed to be one of the most structured defensive side, it is an absolute shocker, the fact that the last 3 games they have just gone to a team that looked like the worst defensive team in MLS, and they're looking to try to change that coming into this game against the Chicago Fire. That theoretically the Fire does have a very good attacking core, but they just never live up to the potential, or at least there's time where it's just so inconsistent, where sometimes the attacking core actually shows up and sometimes it doesn't. And this also kind of goes back to what I said many times last year. I just can't tell what kind of a Fire team will show up. Is it going to be the Fire team that is going to be looking like the best team in the league and able to blow out Columbus in this one? Or is it going to be the Fire team that looked like the worst team in the league and they're going to suffer a loss in this game against Columbus? Well, I guess we'll find out once this game will finish, and we'll talk about more in the review to see what kind of Chicago team actually showed up in this game. But now, moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other than Nashville SC versus DC United. So this game will start at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 6:08 p.m. local time. Nashville SC, of course, they actually suffered the rare loss of this season by losing 2-1 against Miami away, and that was only their second loss this season, and now have a record of 6-10-2. Well, for DC United, they are one of red hot team in the league and in the Eastern Conference, as they're unbeaten in the last 5 games to improve their record to 8-3-7. In terms of the last 5 games for Nashville, as I mentioned, they suffer a rare loss this season on the road, as they lost 2-1 against Miami, drew 0-0 against New England on the road before drawing 1-1 against Toronto FC on the road. But they did win 3-0 against FC Cincinnati, and then drawing 0-0 on the road against Columbus. And also, I mentioned the fact that this is one of the rare times that Nashville SC is going to be at home in the second half of the season, because, as I said, since they have a ton of home games to start the season, the second half of the season they're going to have a ton of road game, and this is just one of the rare ones that they're actually going to be playing at home at Nissan Stadium. Now for DC United, they won 2-1 against Montreal, won 4-2 on the road against Columbus, drew 0-0 against FC Cincinnati, won 1-0 on the road against the Red Bulls, and then drew 2-2 against the Chicago Fire on the road. And yeah, this is going to be a matchup that, even though this is not on national television, I think this is probably one of the most, if not the most underrated matchup for this weekend's action, because yeah, these are two very good teams. You got a team that have been red hot in the last 5 games and have got themselves above the red line, and then you have a team that, yes, they did lose their last game, but this is a team that is still very hard to beat, and especially at home, where they have not lost at home so far this season. And I also would say that in terms of pressure wise, I think Nashville does have more of the pressure coming into this game to win, because, again, knowing the fact that they do not have a lot of home games left this season, they have to capitalize in terms of winning games at home, because so far on the road, they have not done well. Well, I wouldn't say they have not done well. They have at least kind of did the bare minimum, which is at least get points on the road and kind of follow that formula where you can get free points at home and get points on the road, and you can get yourself into the playoffs. But the thing is, they also have dropped a lot of points at home so far this season. So, if you use that math together, it doesn't really get themselves to potentially hold on in terms of maybe being one of the best teams in the league. And I even said that, if Nashville does draw most of the game on the road and win all their home games, I think they do have a chance in terms of holding the spot that they have it in 5th place, but also knowing the fact how tight the Eastern Conference is, maybe not. I think maybe they need to, of course, make sure win some road games, but most importantly, they have to win some of these remaining home games. Like, if they drop points again in these remaining home games, it could really take a serious blow in terms of Nashville potentially making the playoffs. But again, it's not going to be easy, because they're facing against a DC team that they have been just in a really hot stretch in the last 5 games. But now moving on into the last game on this board, and the game that, I'm pretty sure you've been waiting for me to talk about, and that is the Portland Timbers versus the Seattle Sounders. It's the 124th meeting of the Cascadia Derby, and by the way, I am wearing my new Jimi Hendrix Seattle Sounder kit, and I would also want to apologize to the Seattle Sounders in events, because, if you believe in jinx and stuff like that, I maybe have just jinxed the team by wearing their jersey. And that, again, if you're a person that believe that the jersey I wear in the preview and review is just a jinx to a team, then yeah, you just believe what it is, and that's why I said I apologize to you in advance. But in terms of this game, by the way, this was originally going to kick off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but because of the fact that the temperature in Portland is going to be reaching up to 100 degrees, that's why they pushed the kickoff of this game a little bit later. And hopefully, by the time I finish this recording, they did not just announce that they're going to push the game an hour back from this one, because remember when they play against Minnesota and how that was also a game where it was pushed back because of really hot weather, and that game eventually kind of pushed back to like 8:30 p.m. local time, and they kind of announced it literally at the last minute. Hopefully that's not going to be the case with this one, and they're going to actually start this game at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And also, the whole reason why they decided to start it at 8:30 is because, the East Coast people can, of course, watch this game, and it can get more exposure for every fans to watch this one. But now, if you're a person living in the East Coast, yeah, it's going to be tough to try to stay awake like at 10 p.m. Eastern, and actually 10:25 p.m. because that kickoff of this game is at 7:25 p.m. local time, and since that of course is the case, it's going to be on FS1. Now, in terms of the last ever Cascadia Derby meeting between both of these teams, well, the Sounders have actually won the last Cascadia Derby by beating the Timbers 2-1 on the road. In terms of the last 5 Cascadia Derby, so far it's been pretty even, with the Sounders winning 2-1 on the road against the Timbers, as I mentioned before. It was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Then Portland did win 1-0 against Seattle at home, before the Timbers winning 2-1 on the road against the Sounders, before the Sounders winning 3-0 on the road against the Portland Timbers. And in general, when you look back at most of these Cascadia Derby, at least the last 10 of them, the road team has been kind of the dominant team in this Cascadia Derby. Like, besides that rare 1-0 win that the Timbers at home, most of the games that the Cascadia Derby has happened, most of them has gone in favor of the road team. And when you look at also coming into this one in terms of the standing wise, there's no doubt the Sounders are going to be a team that are more favorable to win this one, because you know this is a team that has that is second in the Western Conference, but also the fact that they are starting to get some of their most important player back into this team. They have a good chance, of course, getting the wins against the Portland Timbers. But that being said, you know, this is the Cascadia Derby. Anything, of course, could happen, and don't be surprised if the Timbers, who is starting to get a little bit more healthy now, can maybe get a win against their hated rival in this one. But nevertheless, I always love whenever there's a Cascadia Derby, and I can't wait to definitely watch this game. And I might even just, what I'll probably do is that since this game is going to end probably around like 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, I'm probably going to do the review in terms of the Sunday game, and then I'll basically do a single review about the Cascadia Derby, because again, in my opinion, it's the best derby in MLS, and the best derby in MLS definitely deserves its own video. So yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of all the games that's going to be happening in match week number 18 to kick off the second half of the 2021 MLS season. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of all of these games, and let me know in the comments your prediction for all 12 of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.